It is a Youth Wednesday night. But before I do, I just want to mention something that wasn't in the announcements. It is Justo and Sherry's anniversary today. I think it's 41. Is that right? Yes, Brad. Oh, and tomorrow. Oh, Brad, you couldn't just let them have their own anniversary, could you? I'm just kidding. So Brad and Mary's anniversary is tomorrow, so if you want to congratulate them or if you want to Facebook Sherry and Justo. Yeah. What's that? I think it's 41. Yeah, 41. 41. Is that... Smitty, how old are you? And Danny, you're 17? So they've been... Okay, put you two together. We'll put you together, and they'll... That's how long they've been married. Think about that. Both your lifetimes. All right, you're almost there. 41 or almost married? Which one? I thought you said you're almost there. All right. So tonight we're going to do something a little different. I'm not preaching tonight or speaking tonight. I got two people from the youth group. One's a helper, one's a youth. They're going to be talking tonight. They picked out what they want to talk about. I very lightly helped them. But this is all pretty much themselves. And so Smitty and Daniel, you two, come on up here. Let's go. Before we start, I want to just brag on them a little bit, if that's okay with you guys. And tell you at least one embarrassing fact about them. I'm just kidding. So Smitty's been helping me in the back on the second and the fourth Sundays doing junior high ministry. We decided that one of the things with going from children's ministry to youth was that, and I talked to some of the junior hires, and they said it's a pretty big jerk of transition from one to the other. So we wanted to kind of reach out and have like a middle ground. And I noticed that even with Terry, like some of the ones just come for those days. For our youth. So it's kind of a cool transition thing, but Smitty's headed that up, and he's doing it, and so that's awesome. I'm proud of him. And Daniel is one of my only third degree right now. My only student leader right now, but he's been with me for a good amount of time now, and he's shown himself faithful, and he pulls through with a lot of stuff, and he's a cool guy. So without further ado, I'm going to give you guys the microphone. Is Dan, you first? All right, Daniel, here you go. Take it away.
Good evening, church. How you guys doing today? You guys good today? Good. All right, that's good. As most of you know me, my name is Daniel. I'm a senior at Susquehanna Township High School. My favorite sport is tennis, and I've been going to Word of Grace for about 2 years now. So, yeah. When we were thinking about what to talk about tonight, I had the idea of talking about excuses. It seems we always have an excuse for our shortcomings. Whether it's failing a test, not getting that promotion at work, or not being where God wants us to be. It's either someone or something's fault. It's either someone or something's fault and not our own. Today, me and Smitty will be taking you through about 6 excuses that Christians use when they miss the mark. Excuse number 1, they did, so I can. This excuse can be seen in the very first chapter of the Bible. We all know the story of Adam and Eve and what happened when God questioned them on how they knew they were naked. In Genesis chapter 3, verses 11 through 13, we can see him question Adam and Eve. So if you want to turn to that, Genesis chapter 3, verses 11 through 13. Okay. And he said, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?" The man said, The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it." In this section, we can see Adam is trying to put the blame on Eve. She gave him the fruit to eat from the tree. He sees that God is very angry, and he's trying to justify his actions by saying that Eve ate the fruit, so that meant that he could too. Interestingly enough, When God gave Adam the commandment to not eat from the fruit, Eve didn't even exist. Genesis 2, verses 15 through 17, God commands Adam not to eat from the fruit, and in verse 24, Eve is created. So Adam is trying to use Eve as an excuse for a commandment that wasn't even directed towards her. Just an interesting thought. An example of they did so I can in like real life would be if a leader in the church was drinking alcohol, and despite me having a problem with alcohol, I tried to use that as an excuse for me to be able to drink. In our life, people may sin or not follow the will of God, but just because they are not living right isn't an excuse for us not to. Excuse number 2. Jesus got mad, so I can get mad. In John chapter 2, verses 13 through 26, we get to see Jesus flip some tables, which is kind of cool, actually. All right, if you want to flip to John 2, like verse 13, that's where it starts. I'm not going to go through the whole part where he talks about everything, but just the part where he gets angry. All right. I'm going to start. In the temple courts, he found people selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and others sitting at tables exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and drove all of them through from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. To those who sold doves, he said, "Get these out of here. Stop turning my father's house into a market." People use this as an excuse to get angry, but it's not a good one. Jesus' anger was justified. The people were turning God's house into a market. But while Jesus was on earth, he did more than flip tables. He loved people. Well, this is why he was flipping tables, because he was trying to show the love for God. He was justifying his love for God. He lived a sinless life, and he led people to salvation. So if you're going to try and justify your actions based on this, you might want to practice the other things he did during his lifetime instead of just the anger part. Excuse number 3, I'm not qualified. Many times in life, we feel that we're not qualified to do the things that God has called us to do. This is how Gideon in the Bible felt. In Judges chapter 6, the Lord appears in front of Gideon and tells him that with his leadership, the Israelites can defeat their enemy, the Midianites. This is in Judges chapter 6, 11 through 16. I'm going to read 11 through 16. The angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak of Oprah that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." "Pardon me, my lord," Gideon replied, "but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of from Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us in the hand of Midian." The Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" "Pardon me, my lord," Gideon replied, "but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I'm the least in my family." Even though the Lord came down to Gideon and told him personally that he could defeat his enemies, he still had doubts. Later on in the chapter, Gideon makes God perform different kinds of feats to show that he was really talking to him. Eventually, Gideon believes him, and they defeat the Midianites. This is Judges 17 through 22. It's chapter 7. Chapter 7, 17 through 22. I'm just going to read a little bit of the battle. "Watch me," he told them. "Follow my lead. When I get to the edge of the camp, do exactly as I do. When I and all who are with me blow our trumpets, then from all around the camp blow yours and shout for the Lord and for Gideon." Gideon and the 100 men with him reached the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just after they had changed the guard. They blew their trumpets and broke the jars that were in their hands. 3 companies blew the trumpets and smashed the jars. Grasping the torches in their left hands and holding their right hands at the trumpets, they were to blow, they shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." While each man held his position around the camp, all the Midianites ran, crying as they fled. This shows that if you stop using excuses and listen to God, great things can happen. When Pastor Mark first asked me to be in third degree, I didn't know if I was the right person for the job. I was kind of new, and I don't know, it just seemed like a kind of big thing, to handle, because we hadn't done third degree in a while, and he wanted to bring it back just to bring some leaders into the church. It was going to be me, Kira, and Mary in the beginning, the three of us. But as time went by, I'm growing in the position, and I'm becoming a better leader. As the famous saying goes, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. Even though you may feel like you aren't capable, God knows what he's doing, and he has a plan for your life. Excuse number 4, blaming God/God told me so. So for this excuse, we're going to go back to the first verse, which was Genesis 3:11 through 13. I'm just going to read it again, just in case you forgot. And he said, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?" The man said, "The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it." Here, Adam is trying to use God as a reason why he ate the fruit. Adam is really trying to play the blame game. First he blames Eve, then he blames God. Wow, really using that blame game. Of course, God calls us to do certain things in life, but sometimes people call themselves and say it's God. For example, God doesn't want me to sin, so we can't be friends. Or, God told me that you should be the one for me, but that's not really what he said. He didn't say that. People are often using God to fit their agenda and their wants. We should be cautious when people's wants and desires are being met when they say God told them so, because it may not be what he wants. I can think of a time in my life where I used an excuse to try and make myself feel better. So at my school, I am the president of Key Club, which is a service organization. And every Thursday, we get people to go to downtown the Hilton to just listen to the Kiwanis meeting, which is like adult Key Club, basically for adults. And they just come to the meeting, sit down, and just listen to what the adults have to say and just listen as they conduct their meeting. So this is every Thursday that we do this. And we need a rider, we need a driver to get there because we can't go there ourselves, obviously. So you have to tell someone beforehand, ask them for a ride, and then they'll give you a ride to the Hilton. So as a president, I'm the one who tells the driver that they need to pick people up so they can go to the meeting. And someone was asking, two people were signed up to go, and I forgot to tell the driver, so they were ready. You have to dress up for this thing and everything. So they were dressed up, ready to go, and they didn't eat lunch too because we have lunch there, so they didn't eat lunch. And they were dressed ready to go, but I forgot to tell the guy to give them a ride, so they ended up not going. And I tried to make an excuse that it was their fault because they didn't tell me that they needed a ride, but that's not really what happened. It was my fault because it was my responsibility to tell the driver, but I tried to make it their problem, but it was my problem. Okay. All right, that was a lot, but yeah. Okay, now that I've talked about 4 of the 6 excuses, now Smitty will talk about the last 2. Smitty.
Good evening. If I can open my phone. So the next 2 that I wanted to talk about, the first one I wanted to bring up was the "it's not my problem" excuse. For some reason, the church has, not this specific, but just in general, we've gotten to a point where we've separated the church into varsity and junior varsity, which is bad for 2 reasons. We see the pastors as the varsity team, and it doesn't matter what job we have, but we treat ourselves as like the junior varsity. Sorry about that. And I noticed that I started doing that. And even I would see myself as a leader, but I would still be like, well, Pastor Mark, he's the varsity. He's the one that puts in all the real work. I just kind of sit there and do what he says. And we kind of, for one, it's bad because on the one hand, we have an idea that it's not, I don't get paid, so it's not going to be my problem. Something in the church, it's not I'm not the varsity team. I'm not here to take care of problems, to even be informed about them. On the other side, we have this idea that my self-growth relies on the varsity team, not on me. That the pastors are the reason why I grow, not myself. And so you would start having problems. We would come in and come to a worship service and say, well, I don't really feel anything, so it must be the pastor's fault. It's Pastor Mark's fault for not being in the Spirit when he's up here on worship. When all week, we're not putting in our own time with God. And so we have this idea that, well, it's the varsity's team. It's not my fault that I'm not having a relationship with God. It's Mark's fault or Pastor Dave's fault. They're not preaching the right formula for me to use. But we don't even use it, even if they do give it to us. And I'm not saying that's everybody, but just saying that's an excuse that I've seen given. And the other part of that, being the junior varsity, is I'm just a common man, and the leaders are who get the real work. They're the ones that go out and change lives, not me. It's their problem, not mine. But in reality, the disciples weren't disciples because God said that holy are you. He just picked common fishermen. I think that Jesus picked that on purpose, not to show that it wasn't just these very few who were elite. It was common men used for an elite goal. And it's not about having the title. Leadership doesn't come from the title. It comes from how you act on your own, how you treat others, how you grow, and how you apply what you learn on your own in life, not what somebody learns or preaches for you. And I noticed that in the youth group, one of our biggest problems was when Pastor Chad was here, a lot of the youth were heavily reliant on Pastor Chad. And then when Mark came in, was like, okay, so what did you learn? How did you do it? And we would, there was a lot that the kids were like, no, you're an awful youth pastor. I don't want to be here anymore because you're not doing it for me. And so you would hear all these complaints with each other, and it's just like they would even leaders, the third degree. I think we had a meeting about that. I think there was a meeting where somebody was really upset, and we had to all talk about it. And I was like, I don't understand why that's a problem, but we'll deal with it. So the next excuse that I've seen given a lot is, but I'm right. Sometimes we have problems with, it could be someone in the church, someone outside the church, doesn't really matter. But we have this idea that, if you want a war, I'll bring it. Even if I'm right, even if I'm wrong, I don't even know. I don't even care at this point. I've even seen it just with me, like problems that I have. I would do that a lot. Even if I didn't know the whole story, I didn't know the background to it, I would still just say, no, I would hear a little bit and I would know enough to have an argument and say, no, I'm right, you're wrong. This is why. And we would have this, we just get to this point that it doesn't even matter about what's right or wrong anymore. It's just about us being right. And so, especially even evangelism, we hear about, well, defend your faith. But one of the biggest problems is that you could be right till you're blue in the face, but it's not, God doesn't care about you being right. And I think that one of the biggest things about love was that he never wanted us to be right. Whenever he got in an argument with somebody, it wasn't about him being right, it was about questioning their heart. He never proved a point saying, well, I'm right, you're wrong, this is why. He just said, what's your personal life like? What are you doing? Are you paying your tithe? Are you doing this? Then don't question somebody else's if you're not. And one of the problems was in Acts, Paul and Barnabas had this same conflict where, but I'm right. And they kept going at it. And they finally got to a point where it was like, well, instead of this, we give it to God. We let God fight for us. I heard there was a song I recently listened to about this. And in the song, he talked about, if you want a war, I'll bring it. And one of the quotes, he said, I'll tear your walls of Jericho down to prove you wrong. And it was talking about men will try to do this. They will try. We try to get in wars with somebody. And then he switches it at the end of the song and says, and what God says to my enemies is, if you want a war, I'll bring it on. I'll tear your walls of Jericho down to prove you wrong. And if you think about that, you think about how man can try to fight a war, how man can try to prove a point. But then when you think about how God does it, you think about the walls of Jericho, there was no physical touching of the wall. They walked around, they praised. They didn't do anything. They just did it. And God did it. God took care of it. And so whenever you think about problems in a church, where there's disagreements, where there's, things that we don't fully understand, and I think that it should be about not even caring if we're right or wrong. That if we're going to let a problem segregate a church, then where's the love? And if we let, a problem break unity, then what are we really doing? And so I feel like just recently God wanted me to touch on that love is unity. God is unity. He's not about bringing a war. He's about using a war to bring unity, not tearing down walls just for nothing. And so after these two, I feel like God kind of wanted me to tie in love to this. And love brings freedom, but real love doesn't allow you to use excuses. I had a great man teach me that excuses are just lies wrapped in reason. I started trying to do some men's ministry things with Pastor Ben back when we were still trying to run it. And he came up to me the one day and he said, he was like, we have a deadline, so try to meet it. And I said, yeah, okay. And then I found out really quick how fast that deadline came up. And so I said, hey, and I made up an excuse, like just straight up was like, and they were like valid, like I'm working a job and doing school. I was doing one job in school at the time. And so then I was like, I started working more hours or something, which I did, but it was just an excuse. It was like I just used that to validate the fact that I totally procrastinated. And so we got to, this happened like 2 or 3 times. Yeah, it was 2 or 3. And it finally got to the point where he's like, all right, we missed the mark. We're not going to be able to hit that, timeline that we wanted to. But the biggest thing is excuses. And if you're going to use excuses, then you're not going to find real self-growth. And we started reading this book, and he started teaching me that with excuses, there is potential breakers. Like whenever you're on momentum. When you're on a momentum, if you use an excuse, it's kind of like when a train starts going and it hits a bump or something's in the road. Or even, a car is kind of the same, but with a train, it can either go completely off course or it'll hit it and keep going. But if you completely throw something off course with one little excuse, that can affect your whole ministry. One deadline, one small problem that just adds up to a major problem later on. And so if we are to function as leaders, which leaders are not meant to be a title. That is one thing that I definitely learned. Leadership is not based off of what the title and name tag you have. There's no, Pastor Mark doesn't wear a name tag that says, I am pastor, and points to it every time he talks to us. If he did that, we would start, that's just, hey, can you help me today? No, but I'm pastor, so you're going to have to help, right? You're going to stay late today. You're going to drive people home. But we have this idea that, I'm sorry. Uh-oh. So my notes just, all right. Yeah. I'm sorry. My phone actually just deleted my notes. I hit okay. Anyway, the last part is something that I wanted to talk about with my own life. And it's about excuses, how, I've used excuses a lot growing up in high school, with leadership already. But I've just noticed that if we rely on excuses in our own life, if we're talking about changing lives and bringing people into a church that loves God, all excuses do is put ourselves in our own problem. We're not hurting anyone else except ourselves. And if we're here to have a ministry that grows and brings new life in, there's no way that we can use excuses and still try to promote love. Because love, the whole point of love is not to be yourself. It's not to find who you are and do what you can do. It's about using what God can do, because he loved you enough to make a sacrifice, to make a choice. And so with us, love should not, with all, if you follow love, there should be no problems in your ministry. There should be, and not saying that love is the one cure-all, but love is this factor, that a formula almost, if you follow, that there should be no problems with anything else that you do. There's no, that all these things fall into place, not because love is just some magical thing, but if you follow love, there is no need for an excuse. There is no need to mandate somebody else to pick up the slack for you. There is no desire. It's a desire to change lives, because your life was changed. And I see that with Mark and with Pastor Ben and with Pastor Chad, all these men that have been in my life specifically growing up. Believe it or not, I was still looking up to Mark before he was a youth pastor. We had a lot of nights talking about, I remember late nights on, I think it was just a video game, but he would use those to just talk to me about life and, maturity and how to stand on my own for Christ and just these and if you think about it, it's not like he was on a pulpit every night. He was on a microphone talking to a little kid with curly hair and, well, not little, pretty, but talking to a young kid about how to, he just wanted to show love to someone. And it doesn't matter what was said by Jesus, what was, said by a pastor. It was what was given, what was sacrificed for someone's life. Not just the life of Jesus, but the life of everybody else, what they sacrificed, the time they gave, the hours that were given. And if we try to apply those into an everyday life, that this is not, a church is not based off of what the pastor does. It's based off of what the common man, what we do. It's based off of our walk, our relationship with God. And so, honestly, we talk about how bad excuses are, but if we talk about how great love is, there should be no reason for an excuse. If we follow the plan that God set out, that Jesus gave to us, that love is what conquers all, then there should be no point into making an excuse. Because if you love somebody enough, you're gonna travel that distance. You think about your spouse or your kid. If something happened to them, if you got a call from the police, from someone that they're in trouble, that there's something, there's nothing. I don't know if it's just being a man, but like men always have this idea that they're gonna be the knight in shining armor, kick down the doors or something. But you think about it, that's how that relentless love is what Jesus showed us. And that's the love that we need to show everyone. And so that is the death to excuses. So thank you. And so we can pray out and let you guys have a good night.